Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be going over how to import your model into live2d and kind of going over all the basics of live2d. This is mostly for people who are really new to live2d, so hopefully this helps you out. But you know, even if you do know some live2d already, maybe I'll tell you something you don't know. But you know, if you're at this video and you don't have a model, check the last two videos or find one that's free that you can use. So we won't be doing any rigging today, but I will just talk about, you know, live2d, all the tabs and like just general things, you know, keep you prepped. I'll also tell you some things you might want to know to keep in mind for while you're rigging and some other workflow tips and also secret things that people don't know about. I mean, it's kind of in your face, but some people, you know, they don't see it. So let's just go straight into the beginning, okay? Grabbing live2d, downloading live2d, buying live2d if you need to. Here we are on the live2d website. To go to the download page from here, you just need to hit download trial version. Even if you already passed the trial version or whatever, you can still download it. You're gonna pick whether you're on Windows or Mac. I use Windows, so if you're using anything other than Windows, I can't help you there, sorry. But hit I consent, and then you can do first time download if you haven't downloaded it yet, and then go through all this rigmarole. Of course, if you already have live2d downloaded, you can just download updates here. We will be using version 5.0.05 today. Alright, so there's the paid version of live2d, which is the pro version, and that's the trial you get. It's a 42-day trial of the pro version if you're downloading live2d for the first time. If you're not and your trial is over, you're going to be on the free version of live2d. So what's the difference between the free version and the pro version? If you go over to products at the top here and then go to compare features, free versus pro, it will give you a list of everything that free comes with and what it doesn't come with. Now, you can still do a lot with the free version. Here is an example of a model someone made on the free version. So you can still do a lot with the free version, okay? You just have some limitations, but you know, you can usually work around them. Unfortunately, this tutorial series won't be live2d free friendly, but you are free to watch the tutorial and try to pick out things that you can do on the free version if you're on the free version. I am planning on doing like a challenge for myself on making a whole model just in the free version. When will I do that? I have no idea. But if you go up to purchase here, you can see the different plans for buying pro. If you do buy a subscription, I would recommend getting a coupon. There's like new referral coupons now, and usually they'll have coupons here and there for live2d. So I would recommend waiting because, you know, these get pretty pricey. Also, if you're a student, you can get a student discount, or you can wait until I get all of my rigging tutorials done and uploaded. You can buy 1 month on the monthly plan for 14 USD-ish and rig your model all in 1 month. Also, if you buy live2d, you can only use /download live2d on 2 devices. So if you usually work on your PC, but maybe you're traveling, you can download live2d on like a laptop. You just have to log in and grab like a code and then put it into your second device. However, if you download live2d and put in your code onto your laptop and then say like your laptop super dies and you can't recover anything, that code is gone, and then you only have 1 code for your PC. So, you know, just a heads up, you are able to remove that code from one device, so you can move on to like another device if you get like a new laptop or a new PC. Just remember to, you know, unlink that code from your program when necessary. But once you have it downloaded, you should get 2 new icons on your desktop. You're gonna have live2d Cubism Editor 5.0 and live2d Cubism Viewer 5.0. I'll admit, I never use live2d Cubism Viewer that much. It's just kind of to view your rig, but maybe I'll go over that in a different video. For rigging, we are gonna use live2d Cubism Editor. So let's pop open live2d Cubism Editor 5.0. So here we are in live2d. You're probably gonna get a pop-up where live2d is promoting all of their thingy-majiggies. Usually they also promote one of their coupon codes on it. And there's a little tab for EN creators and live2d tutorial stuff. If you click on that, one of my tutorials is on there. What can I say? That basically solidifies me as the real deal, and you guys are in good hands. But once you close out of that, you're probably going to see your workspace, which may be overwhelming to you, maybe. They're kind of empty right now. It gets a little scary when you input a model, but yours is definitely going to look different from mine, especially if it's the first time you're opening up live2d. We'll get to these tabs later, but you might notice that I'm on dark mode. If you're on 5.0 and above, you have access to dark mode. All you need to do is go over to File, File, click on Environment Settings. At the top here, you'll get Color Theme. You can switch between light and dark. I will be using dark mode for the entire tutorial series because I like dark mode. So first things first, let's import our model PSD. Go over to File, hit Open, find your PSD, open it up, and then this will pop up. This is asking you, please select the resolution for displaying the model image. Basically, it just means what resolution you want your art to look like while you're editing it in live2d. So for example, the 1/2 previews and lower are gonna make your art more like blurry while you're editing it. It will recommend a smaller one just so it's less heavy on your PC, especially if like your file is massive. But I like to rig it in full resolution because it's easier for me to see like how the art's actually gonna look like. So I always do full scale. You know, if you're on something a little weaker, you're gonna want a lower preview. But I'm gonna pick full scale, hit OK, and then our model will pop up and then some of our tabs are gonna be filled in. Everything's gonna look a little wonky at first, but let's first address the workspace. So all the boxes on the sides, you can move these. For example, right here, this is my parameter tab. If you click and hold and drag the title, you can move these around. If it forms a box over one thing, it's going to be stacked on top of each other like this. And then you can switch between these tabs on the top. If you click and drag it and you see this line forming down here, it's gonna be dragged like under or above it in a different way, where it's stacked this way instead of like directly on top of each other. I'm using the same words for different things, but you guys know what I mean. If you're not familiar with live2d, you probably don't know what works best for you. If you want to follow my tutorial like as closely as possible, you can copy my setup. On the left here, I have my deformer, and this shows all your warp deformers. We don't have any, so we just see our art layers here. And then on the same box, I have log and project up in here. I just have these tucked away because I usually don't really look at these. And then right next to that, I have tool details above my parameter list. Parameters is everything we're gonna rig on top of. We're gonna add keyforms on those. Tool details, things will pop up in this box depending on what tool you're using at the moment. And then on the right here, I have inspector right above my parts list. The inspector also depends on like what tools or whatever you have selected. And then the part tab here is basically our PSD, and you can open up your layers and all of your folders and everything. So you can move those around to what you like. Other things to keep in mind are your SDK versions. Up here in this corner, it'll show your SDK, and you can switch this to like older SDKs or newer SDKs. Basically, depending on the version of your SDK depends on what features of live2d you can use. So obviously, you want to always be up to date. We are using 5.0 right now, but if I ever change it, I'll let you know in that tutorial. And then right next to the SDK is this tab that you open up and it'll say modeling, animation, form animation. This will kind of change the workspace into whatever you're doing at the moment. So we switch it to animation. We're going to be on this animation page, and then you're going to have your timeline down here and everything. Obviously, we're going to do rigging first. So we're starting here with modeling. At the top here, we have like a bunch of tools and whatnot. We'll just ignore those until we get there, okay? But I'm just going to tell you guys what you need to know in the moment. And right now in the moment, we need to fix our model. When you put into live2d, everything is going to be not clipped the way you want it to be clipped. So obviously we're going to have all these layers out here and everything, and you can see how crazy I kind of made my layers. But first, let me show how to navigate throughout your canvas. You can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to go in and out, and it will zoom in and out depending on where your cursor is. It will use your cursor as the anchor. So this is usually how I just zip around the canvas looking for stuff. You can also use the magnifying glass down here, and there's a couple buttons here for fixing the canvas to things. For example, this one right here will put it so that you can view your entire canvas here. And the one right next to it, which is force on selected element, just means exactly what it means. If you click on one of your layers here and then click on that box, it will zoom in right on that layer, and then we can zoom out. All right, so let's start clipping stuff. I'm gonna zoom in on my face. If you watched my separation video, you probably already know how this works, but we're gonna take the object that's under what we want to be clipped on top. But as an example, I'm gonna do my face. So I want this face shadow to actually, go on my face. But as you can see, I'm hovering over things and I can't seem to find my face skin. If you right click on where your face skin is, you can go over to object at cursor and it will show you everything that's under the cursor. So wherever you just right clicked, all the layers under that, it will show you. So I want my face skin, because that's what I have my face shadow clipped onto. You are going to select the ID and then copy that with Control-C, or you can right click and hit copy. And then I'm gonna find my face shadow here. I'm gonna go over to clipping ID on the inspector, and we're gonna paste in that ID and hit enter. I have another shadow here that's kind of not necessary, so I'm just gonna delete that one so we can see that it's clipped on right. Now, instead of clicking like actually onto your art here, you can also just use the parts on the side or on your deformer tab. You can look through all of these. So using my part tab, I'm going to take my face skin down here. I already copied the ID, but I'll just show you again, copying the ID of the face skin on the inspector tab. And then I have my front hair shadow right here. It's all separated into little pieces. I'm going to click my top layer one for my flick shadow. I'm going to hold down shift and click on my last hair shadow for the face. And that's going to select everything between those. And I'm going to paste in my clipping ID, hit enter, and that will clip all of those to that artmesh ID. So I'm just going to go around and clipping everything that I usually need to clip. I'm going to clip all my eyeshadow and pupil and iris stuff to my eye whites. I have stuff I need to clip for my ear. I have a lot of stuff I need to clip for my clothes. Obviously, I clip my leg stuff. I'm just clipping everything I need to clip. Alright, now that we have everything clipped, I'm going to explain a couple other canvas things. If you have no background layer, which honestly, I would recommend taking away a background layer if you do have one, just so it's a little easier so you're not clicking on it all the time. As you can see right now, my background is transparent. If you want to change the color of your canvas background, you're going to go to this corner here with the checkerboard box here, and then you can change the color of your background and also the opacity of your background. So I just leave mine pretty neutral and the grays right in the middle and hit OK. You can also turn on a grid if you hit the grid button up here right next to solo. That's going to put a grid on your model. And then you want to make sure that your model is centered. So if you see that your model is off the grid a bit and not centered on like anything, you're going to want to center your model. Now, honestly, I would recommend doing this in like your art program because it would be a lot more accurate. As of right now, I don't think there's like a specific live2d way for certain center things. This is the way I kind of figure out if it's centered or not. By the way, having your model centered on the canvas is like, you need it, okay? You need it. It makes things a lot easier, and when you're reflecting things over the center line, it won't get weird and your model won't get super messed up. So I would just click on something random like your hair or something, and then you're gonna go up to this button right here, manual mesh edit. It's a little triangle with like a pen nib on it. And then once you click on that, it's gonna focus on this little piece of hair, and then you get new tool details over here. You're gonna click on this one over here with the pencil next to it, stroke mesh mapping, and then you're gonna wanna make sure mirror edit is turned on right here. And then this is going to put a green line right down the center of your canvas. Maybe I should have picked like the face or something so you can see easier. But you can see that the center line is going right through the center of my model. Of course, the center of my model being, you know, right in the middle of the center of the face and the center of the mouth where the nose is. So just to double check that, make sure that's all nice and aligned. If it's not, you can try to remember where on the grid that line was. And then if you go over to your deformers over here, you can Control A to select everything there. And then you're going to make a warp using the Create Warp Deformer tool. It's like 4 boxes with like all these little squares around it. You can ignore all this and just hit create. And then make sure you're zoomed out enough to see this entire box. You're gonna grab the center, which is where like this big green cross is. And then you're gonna hold down shift and click and drag that center left and right until the center of your model matches up with that line. And then you can click on the warp deformer here, the one you just made, and just hit delete, and then your model will be centered. So I'm gonna turn off grid for now. Now we're gonna talk about organizing your warps and your parameters. So starting with parameters, I'm going to make this bigger so you guys can see it better. Whenever you open up a new PSD, it's going to give you all these default parameters. You're going to use most of these. The first one here, angle X. If we right click, we can edit the parameter. And here we have all of the parameter information. We have the name of the parameter, which is what's going to show up right here. We have the parameter ID. All the art mesh and all the parameters, they have their own IDs. So those are going to be param angle X. Now it's important to keep like the default parameters because these IDs are going to be what's default in all of the VTuber tracking programs. So you can change it if you want, but then you'll have to manually change it when you put into like VTube Studio to make it work. So, you know, if you mess up naming something, you don't have to worry about it too much. And then ranges here, we're going to have a minimum range, a default range, and a maximum range. If we're looking over here, obviously minimum is going to be the one on the far left. The maximum is the one on the far right. And the default is wherever the dot is. So you'll notice some of these have their dot on like the far left side or the far right side. That's because their default is set to like that maximum or minimum number. And the default state is just where it's going to be at when it's at default. Like when you're staring into your tracking device and you're just looking normal and just sitting there, that's like your default. Think of it like that. And then repeat and blend shape are gonna change what type of parameter this is. So repeat parameters, like it will repeat the parameter over and over again. This is more for like animating. We're not going to use that too much for like our base model rigging. And then we have blend shapes, which got a lot nicer in 5.0. In my last tutorial series, I don't think I used blend shapes at all, but now I use blend shapes all the time. It makes things so much easier and they're so nice and I love them. So we're going to be using blend shapes. And then if you click here for ID naming rules, I'll give you some rules for specifically naming your ID. And in live2d and programs where you have like a ton of layers and all these, you know, files and whatever, you're going to want to keep organized. So we're going to categorize all of these into their own little folder. So if you hit this icon at the bottom, create new folder, it will make a folder. If you double click on the name, you can name this folder. We're going to call this angles. And if I click on angle X and then hold down shift and click angle Z to select all of that, I can click and drag these into that angles folder. If I open it up, you'll see angles here. And if you right click on this, you can change the label color. You make it red or you can make it, you know, blue. If you watched my first tutorial, you're probably familiar with this. I basically will put everything here into a folder and I like to make everything into a rainbow order. If this is your first time, I would alert you that you may not be rigging on all of these default parameters and we will be putting in way more new parameters. But we'll get into that during the rigging tutorials. You can also expand out the names a little bit if you have names that are too long that you can't read. Open up this folder. Now I'm gonna let you know which parameters we're not gonna use. So I'm gonna make a new folder and I'm just gonna call this MISC. Put all of the parameters we're probably never going to use into there. So we are going to use these eye ones. We are going to use these eyeball ones. We are not going to use brow X. So I'm going to stick that into the MISC folder. Why aren't we using brow X? Because we can't track brow X. Brow X is for when the brows go left and right. But you know, you can't really track that because you can't actually physically do that. So we don't really need that. That's like more for animation stuff, I think. And then I'm also going to take the brow angles and forms and stick them into the MISC because those don't really get tracked either. In my last brow tutorial, I showed you like brow Y and brow form, I think. Honestly, we kind of don't need it, okay? Of course, you're welcome to keep them if you want. You know, in my brow tutorial, I might change it up a bit. I kind of change my mind every time I film these videos, but it is what it is. We're keeping mouth form, mouth open. We're keeping cheek. We're keeping body X, Y, and Z. We're keeping breath. Now, hair move. All of these ones, they're for physics. Just kind of delete all of these because anything for physics, I just make my own parameter. So I don't really need these. You can keep them if you want, but I'm just going to straight up delete them. And now I'm just going to organize all of the parameters I have on here. Okay, I have all of my parameters organized. You can organize these in whatever way makes sense to you. And of course, you can always reorganize them later. You can also export these parameters if you'd like. If you go to modeling, you can go to bulk setting of model parameters and export this. At the same time, if you export it, you can also import it. So if you have like your parameters all set and you have like all your physics parameters and whatever parameters you use for everything, you can always export those parameters and put that back into a new project if you're working on a new model. So you don't have to remake all your parameters over and over again. In my last series, I showed me importing one of my presets and I had a ton of these parameters and people always ask for them. Even though I don't use like 70% of them in my tutorials because I'm so benevolent, I will be regularly updating these parameters and putting them on my Ko-fi. So if you're too lazy to organize all your parameters by yourself, you can go pick up the file to import on my Ko-fi for free. Yes, you're welcome. But it'll only be updated to whatever rig video I'm currently at. So you won't have any extras that I haven't taught yet. So you might as well just follow along with me, right guys? On the same note with importing model parameters, you can import model objects and export those. For example, if we hit export for model objects, you can export all of these and they'll output as CSVs. Now you would want to do this for various reasons. Obviously, if you know more about CSVs, you can, utilize these a little better. One example of using this would be for art meshes. There is a CSV converter for live2d that you can use. I'll put the link in the description. Why is that useful, you may ask? If I click on like my lashes here and we look at the name, you can see my ID. You'll see that the ID copies the name lashes. It just says lashes too because I already have another lashes, so this is my second set of lashes. However, if you click on something like lash clip, you'll see that the ID does not match the name. It doesn't match the name because if it has a space in it, it will not output like the right ID. So it'll just automatically go to artmesh and then whatever number is next. So using the CSV converter I just linked, if you run that on your exported CSV file, it will change all of your art meshes. That's like my lash clip one here into lash_clip. Now you ask, why would I care that my ID matches my name? It just makes things easier, especially when you're putting it into VTube Studio and you're using one of the fancy things that like edits how your part reacts with certain effects. If you've ever done that with another model, you've probably scrolled down your model and you saw art mesh this and that, but you don't know what the heck it is because it could be like side hair A, but it's like art mesh 56. It could be side_hair_A, and then you would know immediately what part that is. It's not necessary, but it's a nice quality of life thing. You can also import and export like physics settings. If you go to modeling, physics settings, then go to physics, you can import and export like presets and physics settings and whatnot. So if you have physics and parameters from one model, you can export those and stick them into your new model, and then it'll make, setting up all your physics and parameters a lot easier. Okay, let me explain the parts section over here. Obviously, like I said earlier, this shows all of your art layers and like the correct art layer with folders stuff. So you can close and open these folders really easily with this arrow with a circle around it. If you hit that, it will close all of the folders, and if you hit it again, it will open all of them up. So if you're ever like digging through all of your folders for something, you can close this up, open up the first folder, and then look through all your other folders. Easy peasy. One thing people always question about is draw order, which is going to be in the inspector here. If you look on the far left of all of these layers, you'll see a number. It's usually going to be 500 at default, but that is the draw order. Now, draw order essentially is kind of the same as, layering your art. For example, like see my brows are under my front hair here. So obviously, they're under it. But if I put my brows above my front hair, it's on top. Draw order is the same thing, except you can keep your folders the same way. But if I go to my brows, I can increase the draw order by 1 and it will be on top of my hair without me moving this folder. People don't tend to use draw order too much because it affects everything globally. So if sometimes you want something to be on top when you're turning, it'll be on top, but maybe it's too on top because then your hair is under it or something. I don't know if that makes any sense. But that's where local draw order comes in handy. Well, okay, I call it local draw order, but if you right click on a folder, it's called a group by draw order. So if you have a folder like front hair, you can right click on that and hit group by draw order, and then it will add like a G or something, a swirly onto your folder. So these are going to be grouped just by this folder. So it won't affect everything globally. It'll affect it locally into this folder. For example, I can take like this piece of hair right here and go to 501. It's going to be on top of everything. But you see right here outside this folder, I have this hair shine here that I may or might not use. But if I turn this invisible, it'll still be on top of that hair, even though the draw order is above that hair shine number. So this comes in handy for certain situations. And then of course, like I just showed, you can turn things visible and invisible by using the eye button to make it hidden or not. You can also, of course, do this for folders. One thing I will know is that sometimes if you have a folder hidden, but it's technically rigged on your model and you export it, it might mess up your rig. So honestly, when in doubt, you can just turn things to 0 opacity. So if you click on like a layer here, I might expand this. You can change the opacity here. I can make this like 20%. Change the order. Of course, there's invert mask here. If you've used any invert masking already, you already know. You can also add a multiply onto your layer, which will change the color. You can hit this rotate button to reset it. It's also screen. You can change the blend mode of your layer. There's add and there's multiply. Also in the parts section, when you make a warp deformer or like other deformers and whatnot or in glue, it will show up in your parts folder, but under the right folder, it will show up in your parts folder. If I put a warp deformer on my little stick here, you're gonna see it right here in the parts section. You'll also see it in the deformer tab. Usually I don't like seeing these warps in my parts section because I just want to see my parts. So if you go up to the top right corner, you can turn all of these off or on depending on what you want to see and what you don't want to see. So I'm gonna delete this warp deformer. You can also look for certain parts. So if I look for like my leg, then you gotta click on the filter button right here so it actually works. Go find your leg, and then if you're done filtering out things, you can click on the magnifying glass again and then see everything else. And then let's go over to our deformers here. Let me move everything out of the way. Now deformers have some similar buttons here, like the parts over here. We can toggle this arrow to open up folders and everything. It will be warp deformers instead of folders, but this will show all of your layers layered like it is layered in the part section, just without the folders. But this is where we're gonna put all of our warp deformers that move our art to make the model move. And I'm gonna show you how I organize all of these warps, and we're gonna organize them to set up our model. Now they're called warp deformers, and there's gonna be parent and child warp deformers, but think of them like folders. I always call them like warp deformer folders on my videos just to make it easier for people who want, you know, like easier terms. But this is how I organize everything. I'm going to select my topmost layer. Then I'm going to go down to my bottommost layer. I hold down shift and click to select absolutely everything. I'm going to go up to create a warp deformer, and we're going to change the name, and I'm going to make this entire body. I like to put brackets around it so I know it's an organizational warp, and then I'm going to hit create, and that's going to create an entire warp around my model. You should have this red border and then these green divisions here, and if you click on the middle green thing and you're moving your entire body, that means you got every little piece. And then of course it's going to show up here. You can click on this arrow to close and open this warp folder. And again, it's going to show up here on the part section. I'm going to hide that. Now I'm going to take sections of my model to put the warp deformer on. If you're familiar with rigging, you should know what you like separated. But if you're not, I will show you what I separated right after I finish everything. You can select things on the deformer tab, which I prefer doing. Or you can also click on things and you can click and drag it into a folder that you made. Also click and drag just a square to select everything there. So let me go and organize everything into their own warp deformer. Okay, I'm done with like a basic organization so I can show you guys like sort of my thought process behind everything. So first I have the entire body. And if we open up the entire body, I have top half, bottom half, and we have a chain, but just ignore that. Now, if you watch other people who use live2d, they're probably going to talk about parent and child deformers. The parent is basically like the folder, right? The top folder. All the other folders are in this folder. This is the parent. When you move this, it moves everything in it, including these folders. So these folders are kind of dependent on, the parent is not dependent on the child deformers. So if I grab my top half and I move it around, you'll see that it doesn't move everything in the entire body folder. It just moves everything in the top half folder. I move the entire body folder, it moves everything. All right, simple enough. You know, the folders affects what's in it, but what's in it, you know, doesn't affect everything else. If it's not, you guys know what I mean. Right? But, you know, if I open up my top half, there's other folders in here. So now my top half, you know, this is a parent deformer, and then these are all my children deformers. It's basically the gist of it, okay? I'm not gonna make it too fancy for you guys. But let's see how I have things organized. Like I said, entire body, and then I have it separated into my top half and my bottom half. If we look at my top half, I have my head separated, as you can see. But if we open up my head, we have my hair, eyes, brows, nose, mouth, ears, face, all separated. And even separated more, if I open up my hair, I have my front hair and my back hair. So I have everything organized in like sections. They're not organized like by layers of what's being layered. It's by sections. So I have all of my hair in one section here. As you can see, when you move it, it will keep all the layers intact. It just moves everything that you have in it. That should be pretty easy to understand. So hopefully you guys get it. But yeah, I would basically just organize everything here. If you have anything that has a left side and a right side, you should separate those. For example, my eyes, they're in one deformer, but if I open it up, we have my left eye and my right eye separated. Of course, you can do these at any time, but I'm just saying like a good setup, a good good organizational setup for your rig is always nice, you know? We got our deformer setup and our parameter setup. When we talk about some issues you might have when you're like clicking on layers and stuff, you see here I have the warp for my mouth selected, but you don't see the little green box and you can't move it. This is because we have hidden folders in here. For example, on the left, you see I have my mouth deformer organization layer, whatever picked. For example, on the left, I have my mouth deformer selected, but on the right, you'll see that it has my guides folder selected that is not visible. So if I turn that visible, I can then use my mouth. But sometimes if something's not working, make sure something's not hidden. Remember what I said earlier about having folders hidden? It kind of makes things kind of a mess. At the same time, if you have maybe on the left here, I have my H1 hair, which is this piece right here selected. But you'll see that there's no box around it. You can see like a faint gray box. It's because this layer is locked. So if you just unlock it, you should be able to select it and everything. Now you'll also notice when you have a part selected, there's not going to be those green divisions everywhere. The green divisions come from the warp deformers. So if I select on my warp deformer for front hair, you're going to see the green. An easy way to remember is that, you know, warp deformers, they're green. As you can see here, the box, it's green. So warp deformer, green, easy peasy. If we go back to the strand of hair here, let me explain sort of these other boxes. The red box here is the bounding box. So this bounding box is a red box that goes around the entire piece of hair. But when we're using warp deformers and stuff, this box sort of gets in the way. So you can hit X here to make it go away, and then you can warp your layer as usual. Most of the times people will put this to a hotkey. So you can click back on the layer to re-show the bounding box. I'm gonna go to File. We're gonna go to Keyboard Shortcuts. And you can make a shortcut for so many things, but just look up bounding box. And then you'll see Show/Hide bounding box. You can click on this to make your shortcut here. Mine is Control H, and then just hit OK. And then once you hit Control H, it should go away. Of course, you can put yours on a different keybind. If you're gonna follow my rigging tutorials, I'm gonna have like my keyboard inputs in the corner. So if you ever get confused on what I'm doing, it's a keybind, okay? So just keep that in mind if you change your keybind and you see me using Control H and you don't know what that is. Just be mindful about it. Now, this gray box around here, you can move these points, these white points. This is a mesh. So automatically, whenever you put a new layer into live2d, it's gonna put like a basic 4-point mesh on it just to make it a square. And you need this mesh for various reasons. But, you know, it makes the square around it so you can actually see the art. If this square was, you know, like half of it was cut off, we would only see the half of the art that's in the mesh. Now, if you know me, I'm a lazy rigger. We use auto mesh most of the time. So if you go up here, the triangle tool that says auto, that's auto mesh, automatic mesh generator. Click on that and this little pop-up will happen. Hit the preset, hit standard, and we'll put a standard mesh on your piece of whatever layer you have selected. You can also edit these to whatever you like and then add a preset or delete a preset or overwrite a preset. I would play with these more if you like know what you like for a mesh. Usually if it's something simple that doesn't get too warped, you would do like simple little mesh. This one looks kind of ugly, but if you're rigging something that has like a lot of physics, like hair that moves around a lot, you would want like something heavier like this. But I always just do standard for everything, and then if I need to, I'll change the mesh. Usually if I want to be specific, I will do the mesh manually. Let's close out of this. And now that we have our mesh here, you can see how it will move these sections when you move around these vertices. And you do want everything meshed or else it won't, you know, look nice when you start warping it. As you know, like all of my front hair, none of this is meshed except for this one I just put auto mesh on. So if I take the front hair warp, now you don't have to do this, I'm just doing an example, but if I take this tool here and I move things around, you're gonna see that like the front hair that I meshed moves a lot more than everything else because it's actually meshed and there's points for me to move a lot more. Just a little intro to what meshing is. So let me click on my flick here and let me show you the manual mesh edit tool here. I will go more in depth on these when I start rigging, but you know, this is an eraser tool that erases your vertices. You can add dots here to make your own mesh, and then auto connect this mesh when you have it all tied up. And then you'll see that I only meshed like half of this. If I hit OK, the rest will disappear. So that's kind of what I mean by, you know, having mesh on your art correctly, or else you won't see your art. Also, you don't want these big meshes for when you make your texture atlas. Always keep in mind your texture atlas. You don't want your texture atlas to be too massive or else your file gets really heavy and everything. But we will worry about that later. Another keybind I like to have is show state. So when I hit H, that hides the mesh, but I can still move it if I have it selected. And I can go back and forth between those. This is nice to have for like, if you have like a ton of mesh on something, it's gonna be hard to see what you're doing. So it's always nice to hide it and like accurately see the art. If you would like to make a keybind for that, you just go back to File, Keyboard Shortcuts. Then we're gonna look for Hide Selected State. And you can make a keybind here. Mine is H, like I said, hit OK. So you're gonna have like multiple things selected and it looks nasty. You hit H and it looks all normal again. So it just hides all your little vertices and stuff. Now I'm going to show you some random stuff to keep in mind that people don't really know about. If you have one of these tools selected that has like a circle around it, if you hold down B and click and drag across the screen, it will make your brush larger and smaller. You drag left, it makes it smaller. You drag right, it makes it bigger. There is an autosave backup folder that a lot of people don't seem to know about. If you hit help, you can open up the auto backup folder and it will show you all of these backup files it made while you were rigging your model. So if you've been rigging for like 5 hours and suddenly live2d crashes, worry not, you can salvage some of your work. Another common issue people have is accidentally locking the default state. So when we get into rigging, we're going to be clicking this menu here with the 3 lines a lot. A lot of people tend to accidentally click lock default form and then they can't do anything. I had this selected, but I can't do anything. It's going to say source image default value is locked. Just make sure this lock a default form is unchecked. And then throughout the series, while we're rigging, if you ever want to test out your rig in VTube Studio, you just hit File, Export for Runtime, and export it as an MOC3 file. Obviously, I won't go over that today. I do have a tutorial on exporting your model from live2d anyway, so you can look at that instead. You can also export your file as an image or video here. So you can like put your model in a pose or something with an expression and hit image and export it as an image. And then, of course, you're gonna want to save your file, okay? After you did all this organization, please save it. If your project already crashed by now for some reason, you probably couldn't do any more rigging, but you know, just go back into that auto backup save folder. To save our model, it's super easy. Just hit File and just, you know, save as and put your model somewhere nice and cozy. And of course, you can always hit Control S to save throughout your rigging process. And that is about it for setting up our model into live2d. Obviously, there's some parts of my model that look kind of awkward. It's because I'm gonna do some special things to it later in a different video. So if you see weird layers overlapping, just close your eyes. But thank you guys for watching today's like intro to live2d, setting up your model into live2d, blah 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 blah. This video is gonna be the foundation for the rigging videos. There's a lot of stuff to do on this model, so you know, hopefully we can get a lot done. Maybe. I am gonna be like 5 times slower because I'm making a video for every little part, but it is what it is. Yeah, like I said, if you want my parameters, I put the link down in the description. It's on my Ko-fi. It is free. And it will be updated to my most recent rigging video. So right now, the most recent rigging video is this video. So everything I just set up in my parameters on this video will be on that list. So it's nothing special right now. But as we go and rig more stuff, it'll be updated. Okay, guys? And when I start doing physics, I'll put them up on Ko-fi as well. I'll see you guys in the next video. Maybe we will start rigging. Maybe we'll start doing something else. Maybe. We're probably going to be rigging though. But I'll see you guys during the rigging process. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask below regarding, you know, setting up your model in live2d. It should be pretty straightforward, I hope. I'll see you guys in the next video or the next stream or whatever you guys want to watch me on. Okay, goodbye.